Good evening. It is my honor to recite and study the sutras with you tonight. Without delay, let's jump right in. This is the second pada. The first pada of the sutras is Dharma. Dharma means universal law, universal truth. The second pada is the practice that goes along with the Dharma. In the first pada, they explain to you completely all the knowledge, the rules, and the truth that you need to know. In the second pada, they explain the first 5 limbs of yoga, which are the foundation for the final 3 limbs of yoga, which all have to be practiced at the same time and mastered to reach Kaivalya, or Dharma Mega Samadhi. Let's begin. The actions of yoga are religious austerity, recitation of the sutras. There you have it right there. Recitation of the sutras. Doesn't say read the sutras. It says recitation of the sutras and devout worship of whatever created this reality. There you go. So if you're biased and you don't like God, whatever created this reality. 2.2. Practicing yoga reduces the hindrances to spiritual enlightenment. The hindrances, hello, good evening. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm happy I'm not alone during the study. If you have any questions that I can help you out, please ask. I know the text. If I can answer, I will. So practicing yoga reduces the hindrances to spiritual enlightenment. The hindrances are discussed in the first pada. They tell you the hindrances, and then they tell you the disturbances that accompany the hindrances. The disturbances are pain, anxiety, depression. Those are the causes of the hindrances. There's 10 hindrances, and there's 5 main afflictions that go with the hindrances. When you eliminate the hindrances, you eliminate the afflictions. Sutra 2.3. Ignorance, egotism, desire for pleasure, aversion to pain, and fear of death are the 5 afflictions which disturb the equilibrium of consciousness. So what are they saying here? What is disturbing the equilibrium of consciousness? What does that mean? When the mind is balanced and the consciousness is stable, there's no fluctuations in it. Even a thought is considered to be a fluctuation. And the thoughts are the mental continuum. They just go on and on and on and on and on and on. So when you rid yourself of these 5 afflictions, the consciousness comes into a stable state. But this text gets very intricate into it and explains that there's actually a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and energetic change that occurs when you start to get up into the higher limbs of yoga. Sutra 2.4. Lack of wisdom is the source of all suffering. So there you go. All dukkha, all suffering, it's because of lack of wisdom. Now, this is where I really like it. Grasping at things that are impermanent, misjudging the pure and impure, aversion to pain, desire for pleasure, and self-centeredness are caused by avidya, lack of wisdom, ignorance. 2.5. Egotism is when one considers themselves to be the mind and the body. I'll give the 3 translations for this. Second translation. Egotism is the identification of the soul with the instruments of the 5 gross senses: sight, hearing, smell, taste, and feeling. I'm going to give the third translation too, because when I translated the text, the modern word is soul, but also if you understand the word seer, you'll understand the soul better. So some of the texts say seer, some of them say soul. Both of them are all right, and both of them are missing the other one. So really you have to understand soul and seer. Misunderstanding the seer, which is the soul, but the seer, S-E-E-R, it's the thing that's actually seeing. And the Yoga Sutra says the mind cannot see things in its own light. The mind has to see things in the light of the soul. Misunderstanding the seer to be the power of seeing is egotism. 2.7. Pleasure results in desire and emotional attachment. So here you go. In the Tao Te Ching, it says in one line, once something becomes beautiful, something else becomes ugly. I really like how the Tao Te Ching says it. And Leonardo da Vinci, one of the things that made him so special was because he was a polymath and he could see things from different perspectives, all sorts of different perspectives. So when you can see them from different perspectives, it definitely enlightens you more. So here they say pleasure results in desire and emotional attachment. The next sutra, the mental impressions left by pain result in hatred. So right here you have the beginning of duality. It's simply just a like and a dislike. You click the little like button, it's going to result in desire and emotional attachment. You click the dislike button, it's going to result in pain and hatred. Let me give the other two translations for this. Suffering leads to aversion. So here, this is the Buddhist way of saying it. Suffering leads to aversion, and it's very non-biased. It's very non-offensive. So aversion means ill will. Aversion means you don't want to be around it. It's unpleasant to be around. So because you feel pain, because you suffer emotionally, mentally, physically, it leads to hatred and aversion. But in Sanskrit and Pali, these words are the same word. See? The next one, dvesha, hatred, comes from the experience of unhappiness. Simply just unhappiness. Unhappiness results in hatred because you don't want to be unhappy. Then you keep chasing happiness. Then you lose your peace. The peace is where the real happiness and the bliss are. The peace is a long-lasting type of happiness. Sutra 2.9. Attachment to life and self-preservation are the most subtle hindrance. Even the wise struggle with this affliction. I just had to go over this with somebody the other day, but I didn't want to get too much into it with them because I'll save it for the study. It's really the right time to discuss this is during the study rather than in an average conversation, because you're dealing with 40 sutras in a chapter. And if you're just having an average conversation, they're not going to grasp the entire sutras. You have to grasp the entire sutra. That's why you have to recite it. 2.10. Hindrances and fetters can be relinquished by eliminating self-centeredness and returning the mind to clarity, which is its natural state. I'm going to give all the translations for 2.10. Hindrances are to be minimized and eradicated by introspection. That means when you get stressed, when you get angry, when you get worried, when you get depressed, you're supposed to meditate on it, introspect on it. Introspection is also what meditation is. Discerning is what meditation is. When you're discerning, you're turning on a certain part of the mind, this part here, and that's activating that. So when these things arise, when the pain arises, you're supposed to introspect them. Listen to the last two translations. By returning them to their original source, these afflictions can be overcome while they are still in subtle form. How important is this sutra? These obstacles can be destroyed by resolving them back into their primal cause, which is the ego. I remember the first time that I read this, I was like, why don't I know this? Why doesn't everybody know this? This is important. So the pain can be removed by removing the what's called the hindrances or the effluence back into their original source. 2.11. Through practice of meditation, the fluctuations of consciousness created by gross and subtle afflictions are silenced. Let me give the third translation for this. By being mindful of the present moment, the active defilements of the mind can be destroyed. So there you go. So is there a physical aspect to it? Yes, there is a physical aspect to it. If somebody is extremely addicted on a physical substance, it's very hard to say, oh, you're suffering because of the mind, because it's so physical. But in yoga, the third limb asana, when you're practicing the body postures, it's supposed to be practiced for a certain amount of years. And there's a difference between hitting up your yoga studio for a week and practicing yoga at a monastic level, at a holy level, at a spiritual level. Because it takes about 1 to 3 years to start to condition the body. And it can take from usually 3 to 8, but even sometimes 11 or 12 if somebody's body's weak. But you have to train from 1 to 11 years so that the body's strong enough so that you can remove the mental afflictions. Because if the body is weak, okay, you're not going to be able to meditate and you're not going to have the mental strength to go along with the physical strength. During the physical aspect of the training, and in the second pada, you're in the physical aspect of the training, the first 3 limbs of yoga, yama niyama asana. Okay. During the physical training, the mind gets stronger as well, because when you're training the body and strengthening the body, you're also strengthening the mind and increasing focus and concentration. 2.12. That's why this yogic way there's a science to it. These people were extremely intelligent. This race was very intelligent. They had the Vedas. They were smart. And this was the smartest text written by the race. So this is our ancestors left this to us. This is an extremely well thought out, scientifically put together type of way to reach Kaivalya because they saw the people suffering, you see. the spiritual masters would look and they would see people with physical ailments, all sorts of things, greed, death, murder. They would see these things, and then they meditated on it, and they found out the cause to it. You see, many of the sages have. Our previous actions and reactions have been good or bad. Due to our previous experience, we either like or dislike things. This causes afflictions. Our previous actions and reactions are stored in the Akashic record and may ripen at any time during this life or the next. So now here you'll see in 212, I modernized this translation. They did not say the Akashic record in the original text, but in these other two texts, I give two more translations in the next two. The hindrances are rooted in the accumulative imprints of past lives. It is because of our previous actions and reactions that our current and future situations occur. Third translation. These obstacles, which is kleshas in Sanskrit, exist in the store of karmas. Karmas is the storehouse of actions and reactions, and brings about experience in present and future lives. Sutra 213. As long as the idea of a separate self exists, it will give rise to lifespan, experiences, and the type of birth one takes. There you go. So if your mental continuum doesn't grasp omniscience and oneness, based on your mental volition, which I think is called alama, your mental volition just goes on and on. That's why when you're introspecting, you see how important each thought is, because the thoughts eventually manifest into words, eventually manifest into reality. If you're having negative thoughts, you're going to speak negatively. If you speak negatively, you're going to manifest negatively. So it starts with introspecting your thoughts and freeing them from any causes that might cause you future pain. Second translation, the existence of the root of actions gives rise to class of birth, the length of a being's life, and the fortune one experiences. 214. Pleasure and pain are caused by merit and demerit, which is the result of our previous actions and reactions. So meritorious acts, good acts, cause pleasure. Evil acts, non-meritorious acts, result in pain. Well, if you keep doing negative acts over and over again, eventually, you're gonna get pain. They're in pain, but they just deny the pain. So instead of okay, I'm in pain, and then introspecting it and then dealing with it, people keep putting more and more stuff into their senses, just stuffing their senses with more and more stuff, trying to cover it up. But underneath, there's still this deep layer of pain that has to be resolved. 215. Transformations cause misery, mental impressions cause suffering, and the conflict of the energetic forces of the universe cause discomfort. Therefore, the wise and discriminative beings see that all life is tinged with pain and suffering. There you go. I had people say, oh, I feel uncomfortable. Yeah, of course you feel uncomfortable. You're in a universe that's always changing and you haven't reached enlightenment yet. So yeah, you're going to feel uncomfortable. You're dying. You're in a body that's dying. Your body is aging and dying. Yeah, you're going to be a little bit uncomfortable being in a body that's aging and dying, right? But it can be overcome. 216. It is possible to prevent future suffering. There you go. So this is one of the most important sutras. They're telling you this, 215, this is what's causing you unhappiness, misery, and pain. This is what's getting your soul trapped in samsara. 216, it is possible to prevent future suffering. Second translation, pain that has not yet come should be avoided. 217, preventing contact between the soul and the perceivable world prevents future suffering. So when you realize the soul, when you become self-realized, the soul is found in the inner right chamber of the heart, okay? The mind can't see in its own light. Only the soul can see in its own light. If you examine your memories, every memory that you have, you're going to see light. Then if you examine it, you weren't experiencing it in your brain. So you have a physical brain, and the physical brain has to be trained and taught to concentrate. All right. It can't be scattered. You have to take time and develop the brain. The actual physical brain has to be developed. But as you're developing your concentration, you're coming inwards with pratyahara, the fifth limb. So you're coming in more and more and more towards the soul. Then when you perfect concentration and the soul is pure and you understand what you're made out of and you understand the Dharma, at that point, the mind starts coming inwards towards the soul. Then when you start meditating, you're sitting here like this, and you're literally holding on to your soul, then you'll see when it attaches to the physical plane, there's a fetter. Sensual pleasure, to be polite. Sensual pleasure, whatever it is. Sensual pleasure, whoop, the soul comes out, touches the external world. Next thing you know, you're stressing out again. You see? So then you start to catch it. Then you have to catch it before it happens. At that point, you're practicing your meditation. But building up this concentration, if you're practicing at a monastic level, where you're practicing all day, every day, your life is devoted to it, you're practicing fervently, you're practicing devoutly, or you're a householder, so you're working a job trying to survive and do your spiritual practice. But if you're not regularly meditating and you don't grasp it, you don't understand how it works, you're never going to get to enlightenment. And if you just keep thinking that taking comforts in the physical plane is going to get you somewhere, it's not. It's not going to get you anywhere. It's plainly stated, the path to spiritual enlightenment and nirvana is a completely different path to worldly gain. Is it possible to do both? Yes, it definitely is. If you're a householder and you're working a certain amount of hours a week, you're taking care of the kids, you have to dedicate, 2 hours a day to your meditation and your study and your practice. An unnatural death is not pleasant. A heart attack is not pleasant. A stroke is not pleasant. Cancer is not pleasant. These things are not pleasant. And if you don't practice properly, there's a good chance you might die an unnatural death. 217 or 218, nature has the qualities of clarity, activity, and stillness. This, along with the elements and the senses, provides experience for enjoyment and the liberation of the soul. They're telling you what the purpose of life is right here and why everything is the way it is. You're supposed to enjoy life and liberate your soul. That's the whole point of the existence. That's why the Creator made it. The Creator made it so that we could enjoy it and that we could rise above worldliness. 219. The gunas initiate their material and energetic fluctuations, which are projected into the soul. These fluctuations are specific, non-specific, differentiable, and non-differentiable. So all day, the changing of the physical phenomena and the universe around you, okay? They're constantly projecting something into your soul. The pain that you experience will get purified. If you don't, you're supposed to accept it for purification. So all day, every day, if you're being mindful, this is why the Buddha teaches Vipassana. It's very, very powerful meditation. If you keep practicing Vipassana, mindfulness of breath meditation, if you just keep practicing it and being compassionate to yourself and others, eventually the fetters will clear up. The more you understand the Dharma, the better. 220. The soul is only the pure power of seeing, which observes the world through the mirror of the mind. Let me give all three translations for this, because this is very, very important to understand. Yes, you have a physical brain. It has functions. It has to be developed. But you can't see things in your physical brain. You can see what's in the physical brain only in the light of the soul. This is important. The seer is entirely pure and only observes, but it still perceives the world through conceptualism. So when you're perceiving the world, the mind, in order to perceive it, has to perceive it through conceptualism. The mind can't perceive the world on its own without conceptualism. And conceptualism is going to lead to intellectual understanding, which is going to lead you back into samsara. At this point, we're getting to the higher levels here. I mean, there's a difference between knowing a little bit of philosophy and studying a little bit to fully understanding the Dharma and actually becoming an experienced meditator and being sincere about liberating your soul from duality. Because to a lot of people, it's boring, right? So it's boring. I want this, I want that. But the reality of it is, it's the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, supposedly lifetime after lifetime. I know what happened in this life. I'm not a fully enlightened Buddha who's experienced my past lives, but it's the same thing over and over again. So you put on the next movie, you think it's going to be different. You think it's not. It's the same event over and over and over again. The seer is entirely pure and only observes, but it still perceives the world through conceptualism. The soul is pure consciousness. It witnesses nature without being reliant on it. 221. What is experienced through the senses exists for the purpose of the soul's emancipation. 222. Spiritually enlightened beings are no longer affected by the physical and energetic impermanent transmutation, but beings who have not attained this state are still affected by them. Well, after I'm meditating, I walk through places and I can see the people are suffering. I can see why they're suffering. This one's stressed out over this. This one's sorry because of this attachment. You can see why they're suffering if you come from that type of place. 223. The state of union between the soul and the seen is for the soul to discover its own true nature. This is common sense. I've gotten into so many, unfortunately, I have to say arguments, because I would like to say debate, because wise people debate and fools argue. And wise people in a debate usually both walk out with a higher understanding, unless one of the beings is so high up in his understanding. So as soon as I try to explain the common sense to people, I get a lot of people get offended, they argue, or they just don't like common sense. It's like almost common sense is a lie or something like that. Like it's so backwards that when you tell the truth, it's backwards. It's not even real to them. Lack of wisdom is the root cause of the soul becoming attached to the physical world. There you go. That's what I'm saying. You think that you're getting happiness from it, and you don't realize that you're getting bored, and boredom is a hindrance to happiness, because when you're bored, you're not happy. So the whole reason why you're allowing your soul to get attached to the physical world is because you don't have the right wisdom. And at this point, some people even argue that there's a soul when it's absolutely scientifically and self-analysis provable. It's provable beyond a reason of a doubt. I mean, it's absolutely impossible scientifically that there's not a soul if you study the science. But if the mind is clouded with wrong understanding is accepting what is true, accepting what is not true as true, leads to wrong understanding. So that's why when you're introspecting, you're thinking about what you hold to be true, and eventually the knot of the untrue lies and ignorance, it gets untangled slowly but surely. As it untangles, there's less and less untruth. Then you can have right view. It's what the Buddha calls it, seeing things for what they truly are. Because people, you have to be long-sighted, you see, because you have to understand you're in a body that's dying. All right? Unless you're an immortal, you're in a body that's dying. Since the body is dying, you're going to be experiencing pain. Eventually, you're probably going to die. So this has to be accepted as true. You have to accept your own morality. Then the stuff that you've been filled with, that's lies, that's untrue, you know it's untrue if it's not logically explainable, or you haven't experienced it yourself, or you're not reading it from one of these spiritual texts. That's why the spiritual text is so important. This is all truth. It was sorted out by our ancestors. It was put together by the wisest beings, and they left it to us. 225. Through proper knowledge, the light of wisdom dawns, destroying ignorance and liberating the soul from the perceivable world. Through proper knowledge. What proper knowledge? This proper knowledge. This proper knowledge. This is the most potent, well put together text. It's dry, right? Like when you speak in parables, when you listen to what the Buddha says, he puts it in ways that have metaphors and things like that. It's very poetically written. This text is not poetically written. It's put together absolutely scientifically, as concise as possible, to get right to the point of liberating your soul. There's no fluff in this text. 226. Steady, uninterrupted discernment eradicates ignorance, the source of pain. Again, steady, uninterrupted discernment. What is steady, uninterrupted discernment? That's meditation. That's meditation. When you discern, you can feel this part of the brain light up. When you're solving problems, puzzles, Jeopardy, you can feel this part of the brain. When you do this for long periods of time, that is meditation. It eradicates ignorance, which is the source of pain. 227. Through the unbroken flow of discriminative awareness, one attains perfect wisdom, which is sevenfold. One experiences the end of the desire to know anything more, the desire to stay away from anything, the desire to gain anything new, the desire to do anything, sorrow, fear, and delusion. Well, hello, welcome, and thank you. Because it's so, people try to judge you. They don't, first of all, a lot of people don't want to admit that somebody's smarter than them. If you have any questions, please ask, and if I can, I'll answer. I know the text very well. So it's my experience, as soon as you introduce yourself into a group, The first thing that they do is they play the who's the leader game. The next thing they do is play the who's the most intelligent person game. The next thing that they do is play the hurt your feelings game. The next thing that they do is play the test your patience game. This is what happens when you introduce yourself into a group of people, all right? And when you're more intelligent than them, they don't want to admit it because they're prideful. So if you've eliminated pride and you're using your personality strictly for the education of the sutras and you're really studying them, it's almost like people would rather be drinking soda and watching a movie than studying the sutras. That's the bottom line. But this explains it doesn't lead to full happiness. It only leads to unhappiness in the end. And not only that, upon death, it's not good for your afterlife. And they're thinking about their afterlife. Through devout practice of the 8 limbs of yoga, impurities are destroyed and the crown of wisdom radiates gloriously. So you have to practice the 8 limbs of yoga devoutly. This pada here, I know someone just came in. The first pada is dharma. The second pada is practice. And the second pada goes over the first 5 limbs of yoga. The next pada goes into the top 3 limbs of yoga. The 8 limbs of yoga are universal morality, observances, steady, comfortable, aware posture, breath regulation, withdrawing the senses inwards towards the soul, concentration, meditation, and absorption of consciousness in the soul, samadhi. 230. I think we lost a new person already. 230. Nonviolence, truthfulness, never stealing, abstaining from sexual activity, and non-possessiveness are the universal moralities. These universal moralities, it doesn't matter what time period, it doesn't matter what religion, what race, what creed you are. If you practice these, all the other virtues will flow from them. 231. The noble vows are universal and apply to any social class, location, time, or circumstance. 232. Purity, contentment, self-discipline, study, and the worship of God are the observances. So there's right now in English, I have a ultimate virtue guide. I call it the Master Virtue List. In English, there's around 126 virtues. If you practice these observances and morality rules, all of the other 126 virtues will have to occur from that. The more you study the virtues, the better. 232, because when you reach the higher levels, the virtue actually becomes an energetic entity which surrounds you. That's what Dharma Mega Samadhi is. Let's go to the end of the book. When Dharma Mega Samadhi is the goal, Dharma Mega Samadhi is the conscious cloud of virtue and morality and wisdom that surrounds you. And you literally can see the cloud around people if they get to that level, because you have to purify all your impurities. And it's not easy to purify all your impurities. 233. When disturbing negative thoughts arise, think of their opposite. Pratipaksa bhavana. 234. When negative thoughts or actions are done, either directly or indirectly, or even approved of, it is caused by greed, anger, or delusion, and desire mild, medium, or intense in degree. Through introspection, the cycle of pain and ignorance is ended. So this is exactly what Buddha said. Greed, ill will, anger, hate. Greed is also craving, or delusion, wrong understanding, or you're thinking things in your mind that aren't real. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. This one's my enemy. This one's doing that. So those are the 3 main causes. And anytime you even think of them, if you think of them, you're okaying them. You see? So it becomes really looking at your thoughts and looking at your speech and what you're saying and then refining it. When you master nonviolence in speech, thought, and action, your aggressive nature is relinquished, and all beings will then abandon hostility in your presence. 236. When one masters honesty, any word spoken instantly matters. 237. When you completely abandon stealing as an option, wealth and abundance will come to you. 238. Knowledge, vigor, valor, and energy flow to one who has mastered continence. Celibacy. When you firmly establish yourself in the principle of celibacy, you will acquire creativity, strength, virility, and potency. 239. When one is free from greed for possessions, the details of previous births becomes known. 240. As a result of practicing purity, one develops disinterest in contact with others for self-gratification. 241. When the body is cleansed, the mind purified, and the senses controlled, joyful awareness needed to perceive the soul occurs. You can perceive it even if you just do the soul meditation. You don't have to be pure to do it, but you'll perceive it, but you won't be able to hold the state because you'll get the fetters suck you back in. Your attachments suck you back in. So as they suck you back in, you have to make choices to eradicate them. You have to mentally choose to eradicate it. And some of them have to be done over time. A lot of the attachments can't be cured just by one time saying, oh, I'm completely never going to lust again. You have to say it, and then you have to practice it until the soul becomes completely cured and unfettered. You can literally see the soul get drawn in from the fetters. 242. When one masters contentment, supreme joy is attained. Thank you. Thanks for joining me, Sylvia. I appreciate it. 243. By accepting but not causing pain, impurities of the body and senses are destroyed and higher powers acquired. Here you go. By accepting but not causing pain. I'm going to give a brief example, okay? Somebody who I was close to, I'm not going to say anything because I don't like the gossip. I don't want to put anybody down. I don't want to put anybody on blast, but just a life experience. Somebody who was close to me in a group of people that basically like laughed at like my practices when I was teaching yoga and the healing arts for 15 years. They knew me in a certain way as a kid, and I had studied for 8 years and done all this stuff. And the first time that they said they had a physical ailment, I told them how to deal with it. Like, you have to do certain exercises and do this, meditate, restore your internal energy. And they like laughed it off. Then the last time I saw them, I'm sitting there and I am in really deep pain. I mean, my soul was just being tormented. I was so heartbroken. I'm in so much pain. And I'm standing there and I'm not complaining about it because I'm accepting pain as purification. And then the same person who set me up for an argument about how to heal like an issue with the body, like a knee problem or a hip problem, goes, "Oh, I have a slight hernia." Now, I dealt with a slight hernia because I had a slight hernia and I worked through it painfully and I healed it exercising and doing exercises. So here I am in so much pain, and this person's laughing it up like it's funny. Ah, ha, 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 ha. And they're telling me they have a slight hernia, trying to suck me back into the argument. Meanwhile, I know the person isn't even going to listen because I already tried to give him advice. So if the person fools you 3 times and you know they're not going to listen to you, don't waste your breath. Your breath is your life. Your breath is your energy, right? So I said, "Oh, okay, very nice," and just like gracefully and gently walked away. I didn't fall into that trap. But you're in pain. You're not complaining. You're accepting pain for purification. Somebody else is in pain is selfish, and they're complaining to you about that, how they're in pain. Meanwhile, they have everything: money, car, everything you could possibly think of, and they're complaining about their pain. 244. Through devout study, higher understanding is achieved, but I just accepted it as purification for pain. And I actually started to feel better. I actually felt better after that. So here we go. Devout study, svadhyaya, higher understanding is achieved. Devout study. It doesn't mean pick up the book every once in a while. You really got to study this text. If you want to master this book, this text, you have to recite it. I've been reciting it for 16 years. And part of the reason why I'm reciting it to the public is also so I can recite it myself. I can do public service. I can do my service to humanity. I can teach humanity the cure for all suffering, pain, and ailments and evil in the world. And at the same time, I also get to study it myself. Because you have to study it until you reach the final state. 245. Surrender to God leads to perfection in samadhi. 246. The posture should be steady, comfortable, and aware. 247. One has mastered asana when exertion becomes effortless and the mind is focused on infinity. So here, guys, the 246 says, what is asana? Asana means your body has to be steady, comfortable, and aware. It has to be strong. So the body has to be developed with yoga asana. If you just sit in meditation, you'll get there. But if you do asana and the body's stronger, you're a lot better off. It's very hard to meditate if your body's not strong and pure. Then the next one, when you master the body awareness and the body strength, when you've mastered asana, when exertion becomes effortless, so physical action is effortless, and the mind is focused on infinity. Through lessening the tendency for restlessness and meditating on the infinite, posture is perfected. 248. After one has mastered asana, they will no longer be disturbed by pairs of opposites. Now, I also do Qigong. Everybody's seen the people going like this. Everybody's seen people doing the hug tree, standing still pose. When I practice that, when a car goes by, you're like, oh, who's that car? Is that person a friend? Is that person looking at me? When you can just stand there like this and perfect it, whatever happens no longer affects you. Any opposites no longer affect you. 249. After asana is mastered, regulation of inhalation and exhalation should be practiced. Well, even the Buddhists, they have mindfulness walking. The Buddhist, when you're meditating, just in this posture like I am now, this is asana. I'm practicing asana. This is asana. And then the Buddhists have walking techniques and mindfulness techniques, but even this is practicing the third limb. Yoga is superior because the asana is specifically strengthened and charge up the body. 250. The three movements of breath are inhalation, exhalation, and retention. They are either long or short and are to be regulated by space, time, and number. So now they're getting into the fourth limb now. They did asana, that's the third limb. Now they're telling you what the fourth limb is. The fourth limb is pranayama. It's breath work, but it's also energy work. Because listen to what 251 says. So for all my energy workers out there, listen to this. There is a fourth kind of pranayama that is more subtle than the three gross aspects. So in 250, they're saying that the movements of the breath are inhalation, exhalation, and retention. They are either long, short, and are to be regulated by space, time, and number. So you start with breath. But when you practice for a long time, they're telling you there's a fourth kind of pranayama that is more subtle than the three gross aspects. That's how you get into the energy. 252. When one masters breath regulation and awareness, the veil covering the light of knowledge is removed and true wisdom dawns. So by doing your breath work and doing vipassana, focusing on the breath, the inhalation, the exhalation, it removes the veil covering the light of knowledge. So pranayama prepares you for concentration. 253. When one is accomplished in the practice of pranayama, the mind becomes ready for concentration. Exactly. 254. Pratyahara is withdrawing the senses, mind, and consciousness away from contact with external objects and inwards towards the soul. Okay? So pratya also means food. So in the yogic sciences, anything you feed your senses, music, fragrances, food, TV, book, anything you feed the five senses is considered pratya, food. So pratyahara is when you starve the mind from external stimuli and focus it inwards towards realizing the soul. That's what the fifth limb is. This is another reason why the 8 limbs of yoga are extremely efficient and superior to many of the other art forms, is because of the asana and the pratyahara and how they explain it. 255. One gains complete mastery over the sense organs from the practice of pratyahara. So without it, the senses are all over the place. The mind is scattered. The physical brain and the physical senses have to be tamed. That's it for the second pada. Any questions, please let me know. The book that you're looking at is my translation. It's available on Amazon. If you scroll down my page, you'll see some of the links. I don't put the links up every time because I don't want people to think that I'm doing it just to sell books. So this is my translation. It's available on Amazon. If you are serious about your study and you want to help me out a little bit, please go ahead and buy a copy. But I'm here weeknights at 7 for the Yoga Sutra recitation and study. It's free. Please join. And then at 8, I do the Dhammapada study at 8, if you're interested in the Dhammapada. You don't have to do both. I would recommend just picking the Yoga Sutras and sticking with it for a while. But the Dhammapada is also a very spectacular text to study. Thanks so much for joining me, Sylvie. I hope to see you.